In this video, we're going to focus on the satin stitch tools and the regular satin and the classic satin. And the way that you use them are very different, but you're creating basically the same thing. So these are located under the Digitizing Tools tab. So you can access it up here or on the floating toolbar. And they're found right here. This is the standard satin and this is the classic satin. And just to kind of let you know how I choose to use the different ones is if I'm working with kind of more straight lines, I'll a lot of times gravitate toward the classic satin. If I'm working with things that have a lot of curves in them, that's when I usually will go to the regular satin stitch. And I'll just show you really quick. This one has a lot of straight lines, so this would be a pretty good candidate right here for this classic satin. Now I will also point out though, I do use this regular satin a lot more than I used to. I learned how to digitize using the classic satin, but I like some of the things that I can do with the regular satin stitch. So I just want to point that out. A lot of times I will just go with it. But the classic satin, how it works is I just selected it. It works on a point counterpoint method. So you click on one side of a line, and that's like basically the first side. You click on the second side, and then you come back to the first side to the second side, first side to the second side. And everywhere that you click is where an angle line will go in. So if I just show you really quick, if I left click here and then left click on the second side, so that's first side, second side, I come back to the first side, go to the second side, first side, second side, it's point counterpoint. I can hold down Control on my keyboard and create a curve just like you can with a regular line or run stitch, and then I can release it to go more straight line. And when I right mouse click, you're going to notice that everywhere that I clicked is where an angle line is going to be. So let me right mouse click, and you can see it follows that shape. It creates a satin. Now this is kind of a wider satin, so that's why you can see it splitting there. If I make it much smaller, you'll start to see that go away. Just like that, a regular satin. If I hit this shape key, you can see everywhere where I clicked on both sides is where the angle lines are located. So just want to point that out. Really quick before I get started, I had these all locked. I'm going to select them all. I need to just make this a little bit smaller here. I need to kind of see what size I'm dealing with here. 7 by 9. So I'm going to just bring this down quite a bit, and that way when I create the satins they won't all split automatically, which is actually a really good feature, and you'll learn that in the editing part. Go back and lock these. I'm locking them because I don't want to select them. I'm just wanting to use them as a background. So let's come in here and we're going to focus on this one using this classic satin. So I define one side. I could start on either side. I usually start on the inner side first, and I do a point on one side 1, then a point on side 2, and then I can go all the way over to here, and I can do on side 1, side 2, side 1, side 2, side 1, side 2. Come up here, I'll get really close to it, side 1, side 2, and then right mouse click. You can see that creates the stitches. And you'll see also if I click on this shape tool, I only have an angle line right here in these corners. So it's going to kind of angle in and out of each corner. So it's kind of a nice little feature. Now let's take a look at how I would have to do that using the other tool. And it is different. So let's go ahead and click on this Digitizing Tools and go to my satin stitch. Or again, like I said, you can come up here and do the same thing. I'm going to click on the regular satin. And the way that this one works is you're actually going around the entire shape and coming back. And it's just like creating a regular line. I'm going to zoom in first, sorry. So let's take a look at this. So I just go on one side, all the way on one side, and then I will have to come back and define the second side. So like in this, I'd get up here to the edge here, close to it, and I'd click, and now I have to go back. To go all the way back. And that can close that shape. And when I do, you can see that I get an angle lines there. So what I would need to do at this point is actually come in and create my angle lines. So you can see that this way, actually in this kind of a design right here, takes longer to create. And now I can right click and I can choose my start point and I can choose my end point, and it's going to generate those stitches. It looks very similar to the other one, but in my opinion, it just takes longer to do a shape kind of like this. I don't like using it as much when I'm bordering something all the way. When I have to come back to where it started, I find it awkward to, it can be kind of awkward learning how to control that. If I go to artwork here, I'm going to move this off. You can see that I had to create this. I had to create one side and then the other, and it's just a little, I don't know, a little awkward, because I have that line twice in there because I had to go all the way here and then come all the way back. Just pointing that out. But let's now take a look at digitizing some of these other shapes here. So on this one, you can see that it's kind of rounded here. And this, again, I could utilize either one. And we're going to just focus on this regular satin because it's a little easier for most people to kind of learn. But I'm going to have to define one side and then the other side. And so this one kind of comes in, you can see like this. So depending on the size, a lot of times here, if I'm going across, I'm getting to millimeters, can determine how I work with this area. And it's about 7 millimeters, so it's a good distance across. So I'm going to have to do like what we call a mitered corner. And this is what you have to do with satin stitches. You have to determine how you're going to handle a corner. And kind of the rule of thumb is that if the angle is sharper than 90 degrees, you want to break it up into what we call a mitered corner, where this side comes in like this and then this one will come in over the top of it. I'm not trying to bend around this corner, because if I try to bend around this corner, it's going to put a lot of stitches right here and much fewer along here, because it's got to handle that tight corner. And so that's just something that, like, if you're part of the Digitizing Masterclass, you'll learn in the satin stitch section on how to do it. It's a difficult thing to do at first. So I'm going to come in with this regular satin, and I'm just going to come down right here, and now I'm going to go around here. Holding down Control, I'm going to click around this shape. I'm going to have to take off the Control key because I'm going in a different direction. Now I can hold down Control and click, and you learn that in the previous videos on working with the running stitch, things like that. It's very important to know that when you're changing direction and we're working with curves, that you have to drop a straight stitch. So I'm going to come, I don't want to go over the top of the one, I want to come very close to it, but you don't want to put it right on top of it, because sometimes it can cause an issue. So now I have to come back with it. So I had to go straight up. So now I'll go around. So again, like, I typically on a structure like this would probably utilize the classic satin, but I'm very comfortable working with that point and counterpoint. And the reason is because once I get all the way around, my angle lines are already set, start and end points already set. It's just, to me, it's less work sometimes. So now I have to put the angle lines in. So now I'll have to go around and just define the shape here. It's not difficult. To me, it just takes up some time that I might not have had to do if I was using the classic satin. I'm going to start it where it suggests, and I'm going to end it down here. And you can see it creates that stitch. And I would come in here at this point. I don't really necessarily like the way that it's deciding to handle this. And again, that part of that is because I'm utilizing that tool. And it's just a little bit harder to work with a closed shape to get it exactly how you want. So let's go ahead and let's delete that, and I'll just show you what I'm talking about. I'll come to this classic satin, and I'm going to do with the classic satin, I'm going to kind of overlap this area a little bit. So I would actually start it in here, and I'd kind of come around. I have to like imagine how this line would keep following here. So I'm going to come in here. And everywhere I click is where an angle line is going to take place. So I don't have to go back and define those. Have to do a straight stitch there because I'm changing direction now. Just holding down control as I go. And I have to make a decision on how I want to handle this area. And how I would do it is I want these stitches to pretty much go in the same direction so that it's creating this overlap, but they're going to kind of blend in. And to me, that's going to look much better than the previous, because the previous one had the stitches going up and down here, but going left to right there, and it would create a gap. And so that's kind of why I like to utilize the classic satin when I'm dealing with a closed shape. This one is not closed, as you can see. It doesn't come into itself. So this is definitely one that I would probably utilize the regular satin with. And it's okay to utilize the different tools. You don't have to use the same one each time. So I'm going to start this one. And I'm going to just I'm going to start it right here because it's not going to matter as much of where I start. Now I will say that this area right here is a pretty tight curve here, so I'm going to probably do this in two pieces because I just don't want it to try to wrap around here. So hold down control. That's just something you have to figure out. In the masterclass, you will actually learn how to determine that. And it's really based on the angle, how sharp it is. And that's a sharp angle down there, so that's why. So in this one, I'm just coming around. I am going to come around this whole thing, basically. And then I'll come up to this one just by closing it. And now it's wanting me to put the angle lines. Because I'm coming like this, I'm going to want these stitches to be going the same direction. So I'm actually going to start straightening out the stitches out here at the bottom. And then I'll start angling them a little bit. And it's just something that is going to help it blend in a little bit down there at the bottom. I will create some overlap there. So I'd probably start it up here. I'd probably end it down here. You can see that it's coming up and around. I'm going to turn off that 3D view. And then what I'm going to do with this one is just go right over the top of it. And there'll be enough overlap that takes place in there, in that area. So I won't have to worry about that. You can see I'm going kind of fast here. I'm not trying to get it too perfect. But here is where I want there to be some of that overlap. And close that. Now it wants me to do the angle line, so I'll just come in up here and work my way around. And I really want to try to make it to where these stitches don't have to transition too much or too fast. And what I mean by that is around the corner. I don't want it to have to go from one angle to another too sharp. So now I can right click and I'm going to start it down here and I'm going to end it at this side right here. So I'm going to end it on this side. And when I hit 3D, you can see that it's going to overlap each other, and that's going to be much better than trying to get it to wrap around, because it would cause all sorts of potential issues when you're stitching it out. So it's just something that learn how to do. And so the other thing is, I'm not going to necessarily go into this one. This is just going to be a satin stitch, just like going around this heart. But what I want to do is take a look at this one. And the only reason I'm doing this one right here is because you have to make some decisions. When you see a structure like this, and it's going to be a satin stitch, you have to decide, how am I going to approach this? You're going to have to break this up into a number of objects. So let's just take a look at what you could do. So you could have this one come all the way up and around and over and back again like this, and then do this part separately. Or you could come in and do this part and end it right here, and do another object right here and end it there, and then do this one. Or you could do this object right here separate from, say, this one, making that a circle, and then coming around and doing that one. Then you have to decide which one you're going to do first, all of that. There's a lot of decisions to make here with a structure that's like this. So how I would go about it is, the first thing is, I know for a fact that this is going to have to be its own piece. So I'm going to start with this one, and then I'll come up, I'll run up, and I'll start to do this one. And we'll take a look at this area. It all depends on how big it is and if you do this as a circle or not. I'm not going to in this case. I'm just going to keep going. But let's go ahead and let's zoom in here. And I'm definitely, in this case, I'm going to utilize the standard satin here. And it's just going to make it easier. I need to make sure that this is going to overlap, so I'm going to start up here. I'm going to start up in this area and come around. And this is one that I would probably utilize a split satin, because it's going to be wider in some areas. And I like the split satin. Some people don't. I actually really like the split satin. I'm coming up into here because I want the other to come over the top of it. And I always close it using the close shape tool. Now I need to put in the angle lines. It's pretty simple. I just need it to kind of follow that. And in this case, I will probably start it up here and end it up here. And all that's going to do is run down and then come back up. That way I don't get any points of like a tie-in or a tie-off down here, if that makes sense. And a lot of times in this case, because I'm going to do this all in one, I don't necessarily need to worry about doing a run stitch up to here. A lot of times I do that, but I can start and end it wherever I want. So I don't necessarily have to, but we have to pay attention to this area right here. And sometimes this tool can cause you a little bit of headaches with that, but we're just going to start here in this point, and I'm going to do the control key and just go around it, and we'll just see what ends up happening with that. The reason I like this tool for it is for something that has a lot of curves in it is because I get to go in and modify the angles a little bit more. It's a little bit easier than if I was doing it with the classic satin. Because with the classic satin you can kind of, it can be difficult at times. Especially in these areas right here where you're trying to go around the whole thing. So in this one I really want to make sure that there's some overlap in there a little bit. So I get to this point and now I'm going to hit the close button so that it is a closed shape. So now I need to put in my angle lines. Not very difficult. I know it's going to follow this shape right here. I can do, kind of mirroring it a little bit. I need to make sure that one goes to both sides here. See, like this one, I might come down a little bit because I need to make sure that it's doing it right going around these. Now that might not make sense, but I can't have this one stop at this line because that's for this piece. And this is just something you kind of practice with and you get better at as time goes on of how to angle in and out. So I'm going to right mouse click and now I'm going to choose where to start it. This one ended over here, so I might start it on this side, but I might end it like, I can end it anywhere, but I could end it like, let's say right here. And let's go ahead and put in 3D view, and you can see that this wraps around very nicely, handling all of these corners and wrapping around. It's got a little bit of overlapping going there, and you can see that it does a pretty good job. So that's how you can work with some crazy shapes using the Satin Stitch tool. So you might have to watch that a few times just to kind of see the technique that was used. I'm not talking about push and pull compensation and underlay in this video. We're going to look at editing these satin stitches in the next section, and I will be working with the same designs that we just created. So that is working with the two types of satin stitches, and you just kind of have to play with each one and figure out which one you like better and which one you want to use. And like I said, when I'm working with things that have a lot of curves to them, and especially a lot of kind of more tight curves, I do work with the standard satin a lot more than I used to. And the classic satin, it's great for things that have a lot of straight lines or not so rounded curves, and that's just what I've found works best for me. So I hope you enjoy this video, and make sure you practice. Again, I'm using just custom shapes, and those are the best to practice with. Just bring those in and load them in, and you can see you can see that I'm using these in all of the designs, like the heart and the couple of the different hearts. Let's see here, like this one is right here. I have this shape. All of it is coming from custom shapes. So we'll see you in the next video.